I have this chance on Get Radio to tell you, like, face to face. This is a dream come true.
Oh, brilliant.
Get Radio Breakfast with Rich Smith.
It's Get Radio Breakfast, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with my next guest. We're going to be speaking to Scott Lyman. And when I say that he is a massive fan of the music, of the scene here in Oxfordshire, you might think, well, I'm sure there'll be tons of people that think that tune into the melting pot, that go to the gigs here. But when I say that we're crossing stateside to say good morning / good afternoon to Scott, it's a real interesting conversation. Scott, good morning to you and good afternoon for us over here.
Rich, good morning from Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm just under 5,000 miles from you across the Atlantic. How are you?
I'm really well. Now, just to paint a little picture, and the reason we're chatting to Scott is because Scott is a massive fan of the Melting Pot. He's a massive fan of the Oxfordshire music scene. He's curated a few mixes for Rich and Deadly on the Melting Pot. But the story is an interesting one because, like you say, you are 5,000 miles across the pond. So let's rein it right back in. Let's talk about where this love affair with Oxfordshire music came in, because you're a fan of the big bands that have come out of the county, your Radioheads, your Folds, your Rides, and what have you. But it drip feeds down into just the whole scene as well.
It does, actually. This began in September of 2011. And at the time, by that point, I already knew, and I was a huge fan of Ride, Radiohead, Swerve Driver. I had just become a fan of Foals. But I also knew nothing about the city's local music scene. I knew about their connection to Oxford, but I was so sort of unaware of what was going on in the local scene. So one fateful day in September of 2011, I decided, okay, how do I find the gateway into Oxford's scene? That happened with a very fortuitous visit to the BBC's podcast page. Yeah. And that was where I found out about Introducing in Oxford. And I read the show's synopsis, and I thought, this is perfect. Clicked on it, downloaded the first show, and Rich, that was what changed my life. Because that show contained a segment about upcoming shows at what was the Cellar.
Yeah.
One of those bands featured in the segment was Gunning for Tamar. The song that was featured in the segment was The Organs, the Senses, the Muscles, the Memories. And that was the first song I downloaded to my iTunes library. Yeah. They were the first band I contacted. And Rich, I still remember that reply from whoever it was in the band that sent it like it was yesterday. The reply was, "This is mental. How did you find out about us from across the Atlantic?" I was in Michigan at the time. And they're like, "What is going on here? This is insane. This is awesome." They ended up sending me my first bits of Oxford music souvenirs from the local scene. It's a signed EP sleeve from their Split album with Phantom Theory. I also have a Cellar promo flyer from their gig with Guns or Knives. They're still all brand new. And I received, this was the trippy bit, my first ever issue of Night Shift with Jonquil on the cover. I didn't know anything about the magazine or Ronin or the scene. All these years later, I go back to that issue. I know every band in that issue.
Scott, I am listening to this open mouth because I'm not just to quote the band as well. This is mental.
Oh my god!
You're across the way, and you're mentioning the Cellar. I mean, the Cellar, like the kind of the kind of memories of the Cellar. Kind of the low ceilings, and I've DJ'd in there a million times, and I watched DJs and bands and all this kind of stuff. Night Shift magazine, I pick it up in the local pub. Around here, I go and flick through it every single month that it's out, and you're basically reciting it 5,000 miles away. It's brilliant.
Well, the thing is, speaking of the Cellar, here's another little incredible story for you. Back in 2019, when the Cellar was having its fundraiser to keep the venue from being shut down permanently, at the time there was a PDF available it was a poster of the Save the Cellar campaign.
Yeah.
I sent the PDF because I didn't have access to an oversized printer. I sent it to my stateside British friend who's in Michigan. He works for a copy place. He printed the poster, sent it back to me. I then contacted Vez on Twitter and I said, look, I'm in Louisiana. I know about this fundraiser. I'm a huge fan of the scene. If I send this to you, will you get everyone to sign it for me? Vez replied, absolutely, sure, this is incredible. Sent the poster to her just before Christmas. It was right after the fundraiser was a success. Everyone gathered at the venue to celebrate. She got everyone to sign, even Tim Hopkins. It was sent back to me. I got it just before Christmas. 3 months later, the place shut down. My understanding is that poster is the only one to have all the signatures of everyone who worked at the cellar on it.
Wow. Right. I mean, it's like I'm speaking to like the future. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're kind of going, how do you know all this? Like what's going on? It's brilliant. But so let's take it back. So you kind of sort of said, oh yeah, I was already a fan of Radiohead, Foals, and what have you. Now,
right.
You know, America's got a fairly large music scene in itself.
For sure.
How is that something that you're kind of? Were you looking for a new scene? Were you looking for new bands, new ideas, new things? Because you've got, you know, the bands you kind of listed. Yeah, they're all proper Oxfordshire bands, and
right.
They're all they're popular and what have you. And yes, they've had, you know, success in a sorts across the Atlantic and across the world. But what drew you to those bands in the first place?
It's a fantastic question, and I love that this is happening. I meant to tell you this at the start. I rarely get a chance to talk about this on my end because most of the people in my life, when I try to talk about it, there's a sense of I don't know what this is even about.
Yeah.
So to have this chance on Get Radio to tell you, like, you know, face to face, this is a dream come true.
Oh, brilliant. I love it.
So what happened was my Anglophilia started 24 years ago.
Right.
Courtesy of Jane Austen and the World's Service. That was when I was introduced to the accent, the literature. It turned into music. I have always loved things that are off the beaten path, that are quirky, that are eccentric. I don't like generic or boring. And you can ask anyone that I'm connected with in Oxford C, and they'll tell you the same thing about me. I love things that are just people forging their own path, because that's exactly what I've done with this. So with this scene and with these bands, there's a huge sense of community, and you know this because you've talked to Andy from the Sub Theory and Emma and the Cockroaches and Pet Twin and Mystery Biscuit. I just want to rattle off names left, right, and center. And when I met the members of Canadia, Ghost in the Photographs, Dolly Maybes, and Emma 2 years ago, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this, when I visited in advance, Melissa, the keyboardist from Canadia, helped organize a concert in my honor at the Jericho.
No way! I didn't know that.
Yes.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
That show sold out.
Wow.
I don't know if it was because of me, because I don't have an ego of any kind, but meeting all of them for the first time I was out of my body the entire evening, because I thought, I'm in Oxford. I'm in the place where Radiohead got their start when they were on a Friday.
Yep.
And these bands are performing basically for me. I was front and center the whole time for that show.
Brilliant. That's such a buzz. Such a buzz.
It goes back to getting back to your question. I love anything and everything about England. The accent, the literature, the music, the film. I'm a Brit trapped in a Yank's body, basically, and I have been for a long time. And I will tell you, my biggest dream, and because I know Emma is probably going to be watching this once I send the link to her, she told me ages ago, we had a DM exchange on Twitter, and I told her about what drew me to the scene and my love of England, and she said, I'm so happy that you have found the thing that makes you feel like you. And that was a total epiphany light switch going off, because I had not thought about it like that. Yeah. When I'm having a rough day, I listen. I deep dive into my Oxford music collection, because that's what makes me so happy. And then now that I know all these bands, I have felt as if I'm a part of this community for years because the love has been pervasive. It's been every time I order something from Bandcamp, I'm given extra things because the bands are so in awe. This guy from Louisiana who has been to Oxford once is supporting our stuff because I know how difficult it is for them to make a living doing this, which is what most of them want to do.
And you're a prime example of the kind of the extension of the stuff that the Melting Pot guys talked about, Rich and Deadly, Emma, and all of the incredible sort of local bands here talk about. We talk about it going, okay, you're going to go and support so and so playing down in Wallingford or at Didcot or in Whitney or see them at Jericho or this all kind of stuff. But it extends, and that's the beauty of music. It is the beauty of a scene. It's the beauty of a thing. You find your own. You find and it's like I've always said this about music. It's like a fingerprint. It is absolutely your own, and you own it, and you kind of go, "This is what embodies me." And the fact that you found it, and honestly, it's quite humbling. That's what all the things that you're saying about just because you're in America. I've heard this so much from everyone in Oxford, around Oxfordshire. They've all said the same things. They support each other at gigs. They lend each other amps and drums and all this kind of stuff. But to hear it because of the distance and the accent as well, which we could just slightly pick up on, it makes it even more. It makes it worldwide, and that is incredible.
I'll tell you, it's ever since I became a part of this. It was actually Deadly who told me not too long ago, you are absolutely an honorary Oxfordian at this point. I've curated 4 mixes. The 5th one, I believe, is coming up in March. Deadly hasn't confirmed that yet, but it will feature Emma and Radiohead. And speaking of Emma Hunter's shirt right here. I don't know if you can see that. I have 8.
Yes, Scott, yes.
Rich, I have 8 custom Emma Hunter shirts. 8.
I don't think Emma has 8 custom.
No, I'm going to say this on air. I have more Emma shirts than I do Radiohead.
Well, that is an honor. And you just quickly, because we are fast running out of time, and literally we could talk for about 3 hours on this.
Yeah, sure.
But in terms of kind of memorabilia and things, I mean, we touched on it just briefly there with that. Yeah. But you said you've got enough stuff to fill a mansion.
Oh, for sure, definitely. If I framed everything, I could do it, no question, no doubt. It would probably cost me more than a few grand, but between posters, T-shirts, night shift magazines, badges, just everything I have been sent over the last 14 years, and I've kept all of it. Ronan, Emma, many others have told me you should make it a museum.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, because I feel like I've got this time capsule of Oxford's music scene as a history in my storage bin. Yeah. And I want to show it off so badly once I have the opportunity.
Brilliant. It's absolutely, it's brilliant. Honestly, I'm blown away the fact that we can have this conversation. I'm so glad that we did. We managed to sort the time difference and everything out and all of that and go through it. First,
have you chatted with anybody from this side of the pond before? No.
On this type of subject, it is, because it's quite weird to have such a fan so far away. And what's really weird is reeling off like there's things like the Cellar. There'll be people that have forgotten the Cellar who live in Oxford.
Yeah, definitely.
But you're kind of reeling it off and go, oh yeah, the Jericho Tavern, Richard Deadly and the Melting Pot guys, and seen this, and Emma and Radiohead and all. Like I said, look, we can definitely say, as Richard Deadly have said, you are definitely an Oxfordian over in the States. You are one of our own. We can safely
really appreciate
say that.
Thank you. That means the world to me.
It's been a joy and a pleasure catching up with you, Scott. And, well, I'm sure you'll be catching up with us a little bit later on when the Melting Pot is back.
Yes. If I could say one last thing before we end this.
Please do.
I want to thank you, Rich, Deadly, and everyone that I have been in contact with and I've connected with since I've been doing this, for welcoming me into the city, into the music scene, and making me feel like I'm truly there. I just, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
An absolute pleasure. And, mate, you're one of our own. That's all we can say.